So the war in Ukraine is something that many investors are worried about. It's not a secret that some of the highest yielding investments originated in Russia and Ukraine. In today's video, we will have a look at how the war has impacted the P2P lending industry so far, and I will also share with you some valuable tips that will help you take preventive measures and decrease your risk. My name is Jakub from P2P Empire, and if you are new here and your goal is to learn how to make passive income by investing in loans, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss out on future videos. So let's first review the current economical situation that Ukraine and Russia are facing. Russia's top banks have been disconnected from the SWIFT network, which also impacted smaller correspondent banks. This makes it harder to transfer funds from loan originators to certain P2P marketplaces such as Mintos. As a result of the imposed sanctions on Russia, the Russian ruble fell by more than 30% so far. Even the Moscow Stock Exchange closed for trading while Russian stocks have plummeted. Despite the sanctions on Russia, many lending businesses are still operating without any disturbances in operations. The situation in Ukraine is, however, much worse than in Russia. The country is being bombed by the Russian military. More than 1 million people left the country so far, and those who stayed are fighting for their freedom. The Russian aggression paralyzed the entire country, including the operations of lenders. No loans are being issued, and there is also no debt collection happening. Keep in mind that the war in Ukraine is also impacting other countries. The currency of many neighboring countries has decreased in the last week, the price for gas went up, and the country's risk for Eastern European regions has increased due to Putin's threats. As a reaction to the crisis in Ukraine, several platforms have suspended new loan listings from Russia and Ukraine. The fastest reaction came from Peerberry, followed by Mintos and others. Platforms that were offering investors the option to invest in foreign currencies have stopped their currency exchange feature for the Russian ruble, which meant that investors were left to watch how the value of their investments is decreasing by the minute. Now, many viewers of this channel are also investing on Peerberry, which has not lost a single euro of investors' investments since it started operating 5 years ago. The invasion of Ukraine has put the platform, however, into the worst possible scenario, which no one could really imagine. The entire lending industry in Ukraine is on hold. The amount of loans from Ukraine listed on Peerberry is in total more than 14 million euro, which are being repaid from other sources that the two finance groups Aventus and GoFingo have access to. In short, Peerberry has activated the group guarantee for the entire Ukrainian portfolio. The exposure by the Aventus group is currently being repaid mainly from its reserves in Europe, but also other profitable lending operations in Russia and Poland. The exposure of the GoFingo group is higher. This amount is being repaid from the profits and reserves of its lending company in the Czech Republic and the real estate business in Lithuania. The situation with GoFingo is more challenging in this case, as Aventus has much bigger business and more access to funds. When it comes to loans under the Aventus group, those lenders who are helping to cover up for Ukrainian loans will delay the loan repayments to the contractually set loan delay of up to 60 days to ensure the sustainability of its own lending operations. That's why you can see the amount of late loans increasing on the platform. Investors should, however, also expect loan extensions that go beyond the 60 days, especially for GoFingo loans, to allow the lenders to accumulate the required funds to cover the debt towards Peerberry's investors. It remains to be seen how the situation will evolve. What's worth noting is that as I'm recording this video, the banks of Aventus, its lenders in Russia, are not impacted by the sanctions, and the loan originators have plans to manage the currency risk effectively. The lending business in Russia is still operational and currently profitable. Let's now review some of the reactions from P2P investors. The reaction from the retail investors is something we all have probably expected. Many investors are liquidating their loans on the secondary market with huge discounts on Mintos. In fact, the amount of loans offered on the secondary market was at some point 3 times higher than the amount of loans on the primary market. People are not only liquidating loans from Russia, Belarus and Ukraine, but also from the Baltics. Some investors also demand to receive their money back earlier, as by the end of the loan term, which is not something you should expect. The war in Ukraine is certainly subject to a force majeure event, which means that legally, platforms or lenders would not need to repay the debt, as no one really considered a war of this scale when evaluating the business model of certain lenders. It's important for us retail investors to realize the reality of the current situation. Best course of action is to let their platforms and lenders run their risk mitigation strategies so they can recover the debt and repay investors. In addition to that, we can run our own risk mitigation measures to help protect our current investments. While I understand that people are worried about losing money, we should realize that it is counterproductive to spam the platforms with tons of questions and panic when the amount of delayed loans is increasing. It is more productive to let them allocate all the resources to risk management and debt collection rather than support of investors. But that's just my personal opinion. Alright, so now you should have a good idea of what's been happening in the P2P lending industry. Depending on the platform that you invest on, you should expect payment delays, losses due to currency fluctuations, losses due to defaults of small lenders, as well as losses due to sell-offs on the secondary market. Even myself, I expect some losses, but not due to the poor management of the lenders, but rather Putin's actions in Ukraine. Predicting exactly what's going to happen next is impossible, as we haven't lived through those times yet, but there are certain precautions that help you evaluate the risk and still decrease your exposure in risky markets. The first action you should take is to re-evaluate the country risk of your P2P investments. If there is no de-escalation of the war happening in the next few days, the country risk of all Eastern European countries will increase. We have put together a chart that represents the current risk level of certain countries based on the latest developments in Ukraine and statements from the Russian dictator. If you have loans from the red-colored countries, you should try to improve your liquidity and lower the exposure. Obviously, the country's risk might increase in the future as this crisis in Ukraine evolves. An invasion of one of the NATO countries might as well exponentially increase the risk in all European countries, so you should absolutely exercise risk mitigation measures where possible. Another important point is to decrease the exposure in loans where the local currency has decreased. If you look at this chart, you can see the development of the Russian ruble, Kazakhstani tenge, Ukrainian hryvnia, and the Czech crown. Keep in mind that if you invest euros into loans issued in the affected countries, the loan originator takes the losses. But if you invest directly in the foreign currency, you will be bearing the losses due to currency fluctuations. A point to mention here is that lenders in certain countries hedge the currency risk with swaps and forward contracts. The terms of those contracts are, however, not disclosed, so retail investors cannot really evaluate the risk here. Forward contracts allow lenders to lock in the exchange rate of a currency during a specific time period, which reduces the risk for currency fluctuations. Keep in mind though that those types of insurances are quite expensive and usually they don't apply for the entire portfolio. The situation is currently so unpredictable that there is no point in speculating whether the value of a certain currency will increase or decrease in the future. If your portfolio has been impacted by the crisis in Ukraine, you should increase your liquidity. You can increase the liquidity of your portfolio by pausing the auto-invest and stop reinvesting the repaid interest as well as the loan principal. You can also use the secondary market if you believe that there is a higher chance that your loans might default. Some platforms offer even an early exit option for certain types of investment strategies. To improve your liquidity, you can also explore some of the Cryptolending platforms that offer yield on fiat-backed stablecoins such as Eurostatus and USDC. You can basically exchange fiat for stablecoins and deposit them on platforms like uHodler, which will deploy your deposits in order to generate yield. uHodler pays currently 12% interest on the euro-backed stablecoin, which looks like a very good and liquid option at the moment, as you can withdraw your deposits anytime and transfer it back into fiat should you need it. Now, if you are not a fan of Cryptolending, as this also comes with its own sets of risks, you can also stay with crowdfunding options. If you do so, you can look for exposure in countries that are far away from the conflict. We have recently created a dedicated article that covers all the currently available options, including the expected annual yield from those types of loans. So if you're interested to learn more about it, head over to our Academy section or click on the link in the description below. To go even a step further, we shall also factor in the elevated risk in Baltic countries. Most of the platforms are based in Baltics, where also their banking partners are located. In case of a military conflict in this region, the processing of your withdrawals might as well be very limited. To decrease the risk, you might as well look for exposure on platforms that have their banking partners in Western Europe and who also originate loans far away from the crisis in Ukraine. Here are some options options that you could consider. While some platforms might be new to you, we have already talked with all of them to ensure the legitimacy of their business models and protect investors from hidden risks. EvenFi is a crowdfunding platform that is listing loans from SMEs in Italy and Spain. Robocash is a well-known platform that is also listing commercial loans in Singapore. GoParity is a crowdfunding platform that is mainly funding sustainable projects in Portugal. And Max Crowdfund is a crowdfunding platform based in the Netherlands that is offering real estate-backed loans from the UK and Germany. If you want to learn more about those platforms, head over to our review section on P2P Empire. So those were some of the risk mitigation measures that you could apply depending on your individual situation. Of course, this won't solve the core issue, which is the war in Ukraine. To help support the people of Ukraine, you can join us by donating to one of the charitable organizations that is helping to protect the people of Ukraine who are currently fighting for their freedom. Your donation will literally save lives. We stand with Ukraine, and if you do as well, you can use the links in the description and donate whatever you can. We are keeping an eye on the current situation and are frequently updating the news section with latest measures by P2P lending platforms. We also evaluate the latest developments of the war on the P2P lending industry, so if you want to be up to date, bookmark our article where we summarize the latest events that might impact your P2P lending portfolio. I've also added a section about what type of measures I'm taking in regards to my personal P2P lending portfolio, so if you are curious about that, you will be able to find it in the article. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.